With that, I would like to introduce Stine Mundal, who's going to talk about the option that I didn't talk about, which is scrubbers, and that's one of the very hot topics today.
Yes. Thank you, Christos. So, sulfur cap is coming. I think all of you have noticed it's a big topic on Posidonia this week. And I'm going to then dive a little bit more into what we see with scrubber as an option. Christos mentioned already it's not going to be the majority of the vessel fitted with scrubbers, but it's definitely our movement in the market we see now. And so share some key points of our experience, also how we see it. But first of all, I would like to demystify some myths about scrubbers. I hear a lot. And I don't know which agenda different people who are talking about scrubbers and which knowledge level they actually have. But seen from our point of view, and we have been doing scrubber approvals and collaborations with makers and ship owners now for more than 5 years, more or less 150 projects, so we have some experience. First of all, the big question is it actually validated technology? Is it working? And I have to say they are. Scrubbers are working and it's a proven technology. And has it been a lot of testing and failure? Of course. In the beginning, 5 years ago, there was a lot of experience made. And I think most of you have heard about a lot of these kind of projects. But there's a lot of experience made also from the makers, especially the experienced one. We as class has learned a lot as well. And we have tuned our rules and how we are testing and checking this. As we have learned as well. But it's now a second, third generation version of the scrubbers that are being made and being installed and tested, and they are working. And class is not the bottleneck. Actually now the bottleneck is more or less it's increased demand, so it's the capacity for production for the scrubber makers and finding the correct shipyards to retrofit it, if you're choosing to retrofit in shipyards. So we see that the scrubbers are really a technical feasible solution, but it's really important with good system design. It's crucial with good material selection, and I'll come back to that, to really minimize the downtime. Because you want this to be working, not only pass a commissioning test in the beginning. So this is one thing. Another thing is I hear a lot of owners wondering whether their competitors are going for scrubbers. Why should I go for something if my competitors is not doing that? What if it's the wrong choice? And Christos was saying there's not one correct choice for how to get ready for the 2020. And I think we all know, we've seen a lot of waiting and see. Almost nothing has happened in 2017. But I think a lot of owners are being a bit nervous now. It's 1.5 years left. So until now, most of the scrubber installation has been on cruise, ro-ro and ferries. And it's mainly been driven by the 2015 sulfur emission control areas and the vessels who are a lot operating in these areas. But now, when you talk about 2020 and worldwide shipping, we see a drastic shift in the segments that are choosing to install scrubbers. And cruise is not the first, not the second, but you will see later where they are now. And we also see, and we are comparing our studies with owner studies, that scrubbers can significantly mitigate the cost impact of the 2020 sulfur cap. And if you decide to invest, you should have done it yesterday, because there's a long waiting line with the scrubber makers now. So I think we're wondering about whether technology is working is one thing, but business-wise there will be a price difference if you can run on HFO or not. But is the scrubbers the solution for long-term compliance? We hear a lot about as well. And maybe not. I think the whole reason why we're talking so much about the global sulfur cap now and which strategy to go for is because there are so many uncertainties, and especially with the fuel picture. So maybe until we have normalized in what will be the new fuel normal and the new ISO standards for the blended fuels are ready and things like this, maybe actually installing a scrubber could be a way of avoiding the chaos, starting from 1st of January 2020. And then you have a fuel that you know, that the crew knows how to operate, that the system and the engine, you know how it works inside there, and you actually have a more safe solution, maybe. But whether that will be then continued to be the strategy for the future, where the new future fuels are established, maybe, but maybe not as well. There's the greenhouse gases, I think, coming in and other aspects. But the scrubber business case, and I will present two different ship types, I think is quite clear. This is oil tankers. And as long as you have a bit big consumers, it's more or less payback after 2 to 1 year, as we see. And we have compared our statistics. Of course, there's some assumptions in here. And I think also the different fuel prices we have estimated. We are a bit conservative in the different price, the range. So if the distillate and blended fuels will be way much more expensive than HFO going into 2020, maybe the payback can be even faster. But of course, it depends all on the consumption of your vessel. Same for the bulk carriers. There's a bit poorer business case for the smaller ones. However, for the bigger ones and higher consumers, we are going down to even 6 months of potential payback time for the biggest ones. So, and going back to whether thinking that if this is the long-term solution or not, maybe it can be even a safe investment for avoiding the chaos and then decommission later if the fuel situation is more stable. Could be a strategy. There's a lot of things I could talk about and say what to have focus on and what to make sure that the scrubber installation is safe. But today I have chosen to take out 3 main items which we see from our experience for now almost 170 projects that is really critical for successful installation but also operation later. And the first of all is the analyzers. Because almost all the scrubbers are according to Scheme B, 99%, which means you have to have analyzers for both the exhaust gas and the wash water. And having reliable monitoring equipment is the only way you can show that you are in compliance. So it doesn't matter if the scrubber tower is cleaning out the sulfur, the wash water is nice, the exhaust is clean, if you cannot show it on your so-called compliance computer that you are in compliance. A ship owner wants to show that he's compliant. So the analyzers are really, really critical. And these are not made from the scrubber makers, that is third parties delivering. And then it's really important that the measuring devices are marinized. They usually come from land-based applications, and they really need to be adapted for the use on board vessels. I think anyone who's tried to take something from land-based on board a ship realize that it's different environmental conditions, humidity, temperature, and vibrations, salt environment, engine rooms. The lifetime and also the accuracy of the measurement devices is affected by that. So these two goes a bit together, and again, all about showing compliance. But then the last thing I know that also has gotten a lot of focus is the wash water. The discharge water pipes and valves needs to have corrosion resistant properties, because the wash water that's coming out from the scrubber is highly acidic, has a very low pH, and it corrodes through anything you would think as normal steel or materials. And this has been experienced, hard experience from some early installations, unfortunately. So any kind of components who has contact with the wash water needs to have a high corrosion resistance. Whether that is a higher grade of steels, if that is DRE piping, or if that is also a better coating. And normal ship coating is normally not sufficient. And additionally, and this is what I've been missed by some, is to think about the shell side plating just at your discharge area. Because when the discharge water is coming out below the surface, it's going out in a plume that goes outside on the ship side hull, and that also has to be corrosion resistant. So that's a very important key parameter. So I'm often asked to summarize kind of what is the most important things, and that is these three. And it's not the scrubber tower in itself or the piping. And yes, it's big pumps and it takes extra load from the ship, but these are really the critical three things. So, how is the scrubber world developing? And we compiled our latest statistics on Friday. We have compiled scrubber statistics in DNV GL since the beginning of the scrubber installation started in shipping, and we have a very good collaboration with all the scrubber makers. But we haven't compiled in a few months now. So when we did it last week and got the latest numbers, it was really interesting to see the development. We have operated for many months now with a total amount of 450 vessels, and this is cumulated statistics. But now it's really increasing. And this is something that happened the last months only. So if we were at the end of 17, we had 350 vessels more or less with scrubbers. Looking into end of 19, that is more or less more than doubled. And these are contracts that are made since end of last year. And I've been talking a lot also to the scrubber makers this week, and because this is only signed contracts, and this is really the actual project, but there's so much more in the pipeline. And what's really interesting as well is now the ship type segments. It's not a cruise on top anymore, it's actually bulk ships. 21% of the confirmed and signed projects are bulk ships now. It's both new buildings and retrofits. And container ships, a segment that someone said containers will never go for scrubbers. They are second now with 20% and cruise only on third place. Adding the oil and chemical tankers on the fourth place, you have these really 4 big ship types taking more than 75% of the ship types now that has gone for scrubbers already. And I think this is interesting. And going back to these myths about is my competitors doing that? Well, in traditional segments, there are some of your competitors actually doing that now. We don't know all the classes for the different projects. That has not been closed by us. But we in DNV GL have the highest market share still with almost 30%, which means that we have also have a lot of experience. We were lucky to have a lot of crews in the beginning, so we got a lot of experience. The major makers are the same as before. You can see one major maker having gotten really a lot of contracts. And I think if you go to some of these biggest makers these days, you will have a quite long waiting time and lead time for ordering your scrubbers. So we know that a lot of the so-called smaller ones have starting to fill up their order books dramatically. And they say next week and the next month we will sign 100 new projects. Let's see if that happens, but that's what they say. So maybe this arrow will continue to exponentially grow. What is DNV GL doing for this? Well, Christos mentioned some of the rules. We have our state-of-the-art class rules. We also have class notations to facilitate the low sulfur future. Clean and clean design is something we had for years. We have the ready notations, both for LNG and scrubber. We have the ECA SOx for taking on low sulfur fuel in a safe way on your vessel. But we are very also happy to announce that in our July rules, coming then now next month, we are introducing a new class notation for emission reduction. That is for scrubbers, but it also includes emission reduction technologies for NOx, such as selective catalytic reactors and exhaust gas recirculation. And this can also be applied to vessels retroactively. although the rules will then be applicable from 1st of January. And this is also very nice to introduce this on Posidonia, because we made this notation based on the feedback from the Greek owners, that the Greek owners wanted to have a class notation to show if they have a scrubber installed. It's also showing that we are listening to our customers and what they want. So that's what I had.
Thanks a lot, Stine. May I ask you to sit there with Christos?